Callie, the golden doodle pup, bounced along the beach, chasing a butterfly. "Woof!" she barked as children giggled and joined in the excitement. Easter came around that year, like it always does, right on time, polite as a card in the mail. The world was greening up. The church was planning the sunrise service. The women's committee was arguing over how many lilies we could afford. I was supposed to feel hopeful. That's what the season demands. Hope, like a dress code. But inside my house, hope had gotten skittish. Hope jumped at noises. Hope checked the deadbolt twice. On the Saturday before Easter, I cleaned the house the way I used to when Paul's parents came over, scrubbing like cleanliness could keep trouble out. I polished the silver cross on the wall. I set out a casserole dish in case Danny came by. It's ridiculous what a mother does. You prepare a meal for the same mouth that's been biting you. I told myself Easter might soften him. Easter might remind him of better things. Easter might bring the boy back, even for a moment. He came in the late afternoon when the light is too honest. He didn't knock. He rarely knocked anymore. It was like he'd decided the house belonged to him by birthright, the way he'd decided my body, my peace, belonged to his need. He walked in fast, shoulders tight, jaw working. He smelled like sour whiskey and impatience. His eyes were bright in that wrong way, the way a storm looks bright just before it breaks. "Mom," he said, and didn't say hello, didn't say happy Easter weekend, didn't ask about my health, didn't look at Paul's photo by the lamp. "I need help." The words landed like a familiar slap. I felt my stomach do that small drop it had learned to do, like an elevator in a building you don't trust. "How much?" I asked because I was tired. Because tired people go straight to the truth. He named a number, 4 digits, not a request, a claim. I heard myself inhale. I heard the house hold its breath too. Somewhere in the kitchen, the refrigerator clicked on, like it wanted to pretend everything was normal. "Danny," I said, and my voice sounded older than I felt. "I can't." His face changed so fast it was frightening, like watching a mask crack and something hungry looking out. "Can't?" he repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You mean won't." "I mean I'm done," I said, and even as the sentence left me, I felt how dangerous it was. Saying no to a man who's been living on yes is like pulling a bone from a dog that's starving. He stepped closer. "You're kidding," he said. "After everything, after what I've been through, you're going to get high and mighty now?" I didn't answer. I looked at him, really looked, at the trembling in his hands, at the broken capillaries around his nose, at the way his eyes wouldn't settle, at the anger that seemed to live under his skin like a swarm. I saw my son, yes, but I also saw the bottle standing between us, tall as a wall, and I realized with a kind of cold clarity that if I didn't stop now, there might not be anything left of me to save later. "You're not getting it," I said quietly. "Not today, not ever again." He laughed. It wasn't Paul's laugh. It wasn't even Danny's old laugh. It was something sharp and empty. "So that's it," he said. "You're just going to sit on your money like a queen on a pile of bones." "It's not your money," I said, and I hated how my voice shook on the word your. "It's mine. It's what your father and I saved. It's what I need to live." He took another step. His shadow fell over the Easter lilies I'd set in a vase on the table, white blooms, delicate, innocent, like they didn't belong in the same room as him. He looked around, like he was suddenly noticing everything with different eyes. The television, the lamp, the framed photos, the little box on the shelf where I kept Paul's ring. Then he looked at my hand, my ring. I saw the moment his mind made the turn. You can feel it when someone decides you're not a person anymore. You become a resource, a container, a wallet with a heartbeat. "Fine," he said, and his voice went low. "Then I'll take something else." I didn't have time to move, not really. My body is not the quick thing it used to be. I turned instinctively, reaching for the cane by my chair, and that's when he grabbed me. Not gently, not like a son, like a thief. Pain flashed through my wrist as he twisted my hand, and I made a sound I didn't recognize coming out of myself, half gasp, half prayer. I tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. His face was close enough that I could smell the old beer on his breath, the stale sweetness of something fermented and rotten. "Danny," I said, and my voice broke on his name. "Well, stop!" For a split second, I thought he might. There was a flicker, something human, maybe. Then it drowned. His eyes went flat. He yanked my ring, hard, skin tore, my finger burned. The world narrowed to that single cruel tug, the snap of a lifetime coming loose, the cold shock of emptiness where gold had been. I stumbled back. The cane clattered. My knuckles hit the table, and the vase of lilies shuddered.
One petal fell like a small white surrender. He held my ring up between two fingers, triumphant, as if he'd won something. "See," he said, "problem solved." And then he reached toward the shelf, toward Paul's ring, and something in me surged up, not bravery, not strength, something older and deeper, the kind of instinct animals have when they're cornered. "No," I said, louder now, raw. "Not that, leave that." He smiled, a cruel little twist of his mouth. "What, that old thing? Dad's dead. He doesn't need it." The sentence hit me harder than his hands did, because it was true in the way cruelty is true, clean, sharp, merciless. Paul was dead. The ring was only metal. The meaning lived in me, and my son was stripping it out of me, piece by piece, like he was hollowing a house for salvage. He snatched the small box. He didn't even open it carefully. He dumped it into his palm like it was spare change. Paul's ring slid out with a soft click that sounded like a coffin latch in my memory. He pocketed it along with my ring. He scooped up a couple of other small things within reach, my mother's cameo, a bracelet I rarely wore, and then he backed toward the door, his chest heaving, his eyes wild. He looked at me like he expected me to lunge at him, like he wanted me to, so he could justify whatever came next. I didn't. I held my bleeding hand to my chest. I stood there shaking, not from fear alone, but from heartbreak so big it felt like weather. He left. The door slammed. The house rang with it. When the sound faded, I realized I was making a quiet noise, like a wounded animal. I forced myself to stop. I sat down because the room tilted. I stared at my bare finger. The skin was torn, angry red. There was blood on my knuckle. There was no ring. There was no warmth. And there, in the middle of my Easter-cleaned living room, I understood something that took me 76 years to learn. Love can be a doorway, and sometimes the person you love uses it to break into you. I didn't call the police right away. That's the part people judge, the part they don't understand. They imagine a straight line from harm to justice, as if the heart doesn't get in the way, as if motherhood doesn't braid itself into your bones. I spent that night sitting in my chair with the lights on, listening to every sound outside, holding an ice pack to my hand and whispering Paul's name as if he could come back and stand between me and what our son had become. I stared at the little empty box on the shelf and felt like someone had stolen more than rings. They'd stolen the last proof that my life had been tender. The next morning was Easter Sunday. The sun came up anyway. Birds insisted on singing. The world did what it always does, kept going, indifferent to private tragedies. I put on my coat and went to church because I didn't know where else to put my grief. The sanctuary smelled like lilies and old wood and perfume. People wore soft colors and smiled too brightly, as if joy was something you could pin on like a corsage. I sat in the back pew with my bandaged hand in my lap. When the choir sang about rising again, my throat tightened so hard I couldn't sing. I just listened. I watched the candles flicker. I watched the pastor lift his hands and speak of forgiveness. Forgiveness. That word has been used like a weapon against women like me. Forgive. Forgive. As if forgiving means reopening the door. As if forgiving means handing the keys back to the person who broke you. I sat there and looked at the cross and thought about sacrifice. I thought about how Jesus didn't climb off the cross to keep other people comfortable. I thought about how resurrection came after the boundary of death, not before it. And for the first time, I wondered if what I needed wasn't forgiveness first, but protection. A stone rolled into place, a guard at the door. After service, the ladies fussed over me. They saw the bandage. They asked what happened. I lied. I said I cut myself in the kitchen. The lie tasted bitter, but I wasn't ready to speak the truth out loud. Saying it makes it real. Saying it makes people look at you differently. They look at you like you failed, like you raised wrong, like you should have known. They don't ask what it's like to love a child who is slowly turning into someone who scares you. They don't ask how many times you prayed. They don't ask how many times you tried. That afternoon, I called Danny. It went to voicemail. I left a message that sounded like someone else. Small, pleading. I asked for the rings back. I told him I wouldn't make trouble if he returned them. I hated myself for bargaining, but grief makes beggars out of us. He texted hours later. A few words. Cold. Dismissive. He'd already sold them. He didn't say it directly, but I heard it in the way he wrote. The rings were gone. 50 years of marriage traded for a night of numbness. Something went quiet inside me then. Not numb. Clear.
Like water after the mud settles. 4 days later he called again, not to apologize, not to ask if my hand healed, not to say he'd been possessed by something and he was sorry. He called for money again. Like my blood on the carpet was a minor inconvenience. Like my marriage was an old story he could pawn. Like I was still obligated to feed the thing eating him alive. And that, right there, was my Easter stone rolling away, not the miracle kind, the truth kind, the kind that reveals what's been in the dark. No, I said into the phone, and my voice didn't shake. No more. He started to shout, the old familiar rage heating up, but I ended the call. I stared at the silent screen. My heart pounded, my hand throbbed, and yet I felt steady, not happy, not relieved, just steady. Like my spine had finally remembered it was made for holding me upright. The next morning, I went to the police station with my church purse and my bandaged hand and the kind of shame that makes your skin hot. I told the truth in a small interview room under harsh lights. I said the words out loud. My son assaulted me. He stole my rings. He took my husband's wedding band. I watched the officer's face shift from polite attention to sober concern. They asked questions, dates, details. I answered like I was reciting facts from someone else's life, because if I let myself feel it too hard, I would have folded in half. They took photos of my injuries. They wrote it down. They treated me kindly, and that kindness nearly broke me more than Danny did, because it reminded me what normal human decency looks like. They asked if I wanted a protective order. That phrase, protective order, felt like another kind of funeral. But I said yes. I said yes because my body is not a punching bag for anyone's addiction. I said yes because I deserve to grow old without flinching at my own door. I said yes because my husband's laughter didn't echo through this house for me to die frightened in it. They found Danny within a day at some cheap place off the highway. He was drunk when they arrested him. That's what they told me. I didn't go to see it. I couldn't. Some images are too heavy to carry. In my mind, he was still 7 years old, running through the sprinkler in the yard, calling for me, wet hair plastered to his forehead, laughing. I couldn't stitch that boy onto the man in handcuffs, so I didn't try. People asked me later if I felt satisfied, if it felt like revenge, like I won. I didn't win anything. There are no winners in a story like mine. There are only survivors. There is only the slow work of rebuilding a life after someone you love tries to tear it down. But I'll tell you what I did feel, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I felt a door close. I felt the leash finally pulled off. I felt the flow of my money, my peace, my breath return to me. I changed the locks. I installed a little camera by the porch. I stopped keeping extra cash in the house like a guilty secret. I started sleeping with the bedroom door closed, and after a while I started sleeping at all. Weeks passed, then months. Spring warmed into summer, and the yard grew wild where I'd neglected it. One evening, I went outside with a pair of gardening gloves and pulled weeds until my back protested. I planted new marigolds. I planted them even though Paul wasn't there to tease me about how stubborn I was. I planted them because life doesn't ask permission to continue, and neither should I. There were court dates, paperwork, the slow, grinding machine of consequences. A part of me wanted to hide from it. A part of me wanted to take it back just to stop the ache of being the mother who called the police. But then I'd look at my scarred finger, at the pale line where my ring used to rest, and I'd remember the look in Danny's eyes when he hurt me. I'd remember how easy it was for him. And I'd know if I protected him from consequence, I would only be protecting the monster, not the boy. The boy was already buried under bottles and entitlement and rage. On the next Easter, I went to church again. My hand had healed, though the scar remained like a thin white thread. The ladies had lilies again. Children ran around in bright outfits and carried little baskets. The pastor spoke of mercy and renewal. I listened differently. I wasn't waiting for a miracle that turned my son back into who he used to be. I wasn't bargaining with God anymore. I was learning the harder kind of faith, the kind where you accept that some stones don't roll away to reveal joy, but to reveal truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is still a kind of light. I thought about Danny somewhere out there in the world of his own choices. I thought about how addiction is a thief that breaks into families and steals the faces you recognize. I thought about the way love can turn into a chain if you don't know when to let go.